The way the Almighty created the world, we live for certain times. What happened? The question we're going to present today, it's a painful question. In my almost 2 decades in rabbinate, unfortunately it happened several times. The question is, if someone passed during the festival, if someone passed during Rosh Hashanah, how do we treat it? Is any different between the first day, the second day? Is any different between taking care of the body needs by a non-Jew? That's part of our discussion today, which soon you see a lot of practical halachot. We are on page 6, the top of the page. אמר רבא, מת ביום טוב ראשון, יתעסקו בו עממים. מת ביום טוב שני, יתעסקו בו ישראל. ואפילו בשני ימים טובים של ראש השנה, אמן, מה שאין כן בביצה. Rashi tells us, מת המוטל לקבור עם יום טוב ראשון הוא. We have 2 days of festival in diaspora. We said that if someone passed away, for our discussion, we'll go here particularly to Rosh Hashanah, but it applies to other festivals. So let's start with the idea of Rosh Hashanah. We mentioned several times that it's considering 1 day. But with all due respect to the idea that it's 1 day, as we discussed in the past, it wasn't so through our generation. It was a Geonic era that Rosh Hashanah observed only for 1 day. Later, from the time of the Rif and onward, they began a new era, which is celebration for Rosh Hashanah as 1 long day, which maintained 2 days. But for our understanding, someone passed, for the first phase of our discussion, we're not talking about passing on Rosh Hashanah per se. It can be even before Rosh Hashanah. Our discussion at this point is about taking care of the body needs, which is, in one hand, human dignity, which is very important. On the other hand, it is a biblical prohibition of violation of the holidays. What's the reason we need to deal with that? Imagine even nowadays, but especially in those days, it was an era of persecution. It was a situation of delays to this very day. If someone is missing in action, is someone missing, like we have recently the fellow from New Zealand that went to those boat competition and was missing for a couple of days. It happens in many, many life circumstances that all of a sudden we are now on Rosh Hashanah, or we are now doing festival, and they come up with a question, the fellow is Jewish, we need to take care of the body needs, we need to take care of the burial, what should we do? The conflict, the holiday, it's biblical, Isur deoraita. It's a biblical prohibition that's called melacha biyom tov, doing work during the festival. So we have the kvod hamet, we have the human dignity which applied to the deceased, but that cannot override biblical prohibition. What do? We don't want to leave the body like that. Especially, as you know, especially those people who are dealing with Chevra Kadisha, they know that over the time the body decays, carry a bad odor, sometimes is almost disgraced. And yes, in our days we have the freezing room, we have other process to do, but it's much more detailed. Mike will tell you, those who are in charge in the cemetery, it takes time to dig a grave, to do all the preparations. So if it's in conflict of biblical precepts supersede anything else. Yet, there is a concept that called אמירה לנוכרי. Meaning, if it's a rabbinic and let me emphasize, if it's rabbinic, such as the second day of the holiday, as you know, second day, it's only mechamat safek, it's only because of uncertainty. So if you have in one hand rabbinic prohibition, on the other hand, kvod habriyot, a human dignity, we say that human dignity override rabbinic prohibition. So with that in mind, let's read this statement. Amar Rava. Rava tells us, if one died on the first day of the festival, a non-Jew should attend to his burial. Why? Again, we don't want the body to carry in bad odor, to wait for the next day. So Rashi tells us you do it that day. Second day, it's a different story. Second day, now it's rabbinic. We said Yitasku bo Israel. A fellow Jew should attend to his burial. It's a different story. Now, when it's come to this halachot, there are many details, such as carries the dead body, tiltul hamet. This is a very serious Rishonim disputation, if we are allowed to do that during the holidays. But to make it as possible and simple as we can, with regard to a deceased, the rabbis are lenient to juxtapose, to compare, to make the second day of Rosh Hashanah as the second day of the diaspora, versus the story of egg that laid during the second day. In other words, we, with all due respect to the halachot of Beitzah, of the egg, we cannot make a comparison to dealing with deceased. Now, the truth is, in nowadays we have Chevra Kadisha, and it's worldwide known that each community have his own Chevra Kadisha, and they have by halacha their designated rabbi. They're dealing with all the nuances in the situation. So we are now not at this point in the final domain of this halachic decision. We just expose to this discussion. We have biblical precept, honor dignity of human being, biblical precept override. Rabbinic commandment and honor of human dignity override rabbinic commandment. Especially since the second day of the festival, it's in a state of uncertainty. It's come out of the idea that we are not so sure which day is the proper day. So therefore we go more lenient. Nehar de Amrei is another city of learning called Nehar de. They hold af bebeitza. Also in regard to egg that laid on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we treat it the same as second day of the festival. In other words, if egg laid at the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we're allowed to eat it at the second day. Why? The mada'atich. What's in your mind? Dilma me'abre leile elul. We may face a situation, as we discussed yesterday, that the rabbinic court made the month of Elul as a full month, which means all of a sudden the witnesses came, they sanctified the date, make it another day, which again, we need to remember what we mentioned yesterday and day before yesterday. We have a great rabbis by the name of Ran and Rosh that tells us a statement that comes from the Rif, Rabbeinu Alfas. Very important statement. Those rabbis lived about 11th century, meaning about 800-900 years ago. And they came up with the idea that during the Geonic era, the Rif said, especially in Yerushalayim, they used to have Rosh Hashanah only one day. Because remember, originally speaking, at the time of Abaye, Rava, Hillel HaZaken, They knew the Soda Ibu, they knew all the numbers, they know everything, they have a calendar, they know exactly what's happened. But then the Baal HaMaor, who is a student of the Rif, he said, as well as the Rif, that they said that they instituted the idea of 2 days. Meaning we're talking about altogether, I'll say 2,500 years, 2,500 years, that we do not have the month of Elul Me'ubar.
Cool.
You see the only about 420 years after the Khurban, after the destruction, you see it. You read the story of the time of Ezra in the Tanakh that they are forced to do Elul Me'ubar. But other than that, we do not have it. So here we have this point that it said that if those Edim came before Mincha, even 10 minutes before Shkia, before the sun set, so you treated in that sense as it's a one long sanctity of 2 days.
Did this have anything to do with when the Kutim lit the torches to try to...
No.
Because
we are speaking here about the idea that we try to treat Rosh Hashanah for the sake of leniency in that sense.
No, I understand. I'm saying was part of the reason why they went to a 2-day Rosh Hashanah because of that, because they couldn't use the torches anymore.
No, what we talked about Kutim earlier was not specifically applied to Rosh Hashanah. If you remember, we talked about Kutim, the whole idea they tried to mess up the Rosh Chodesh.
Right, so they had to send, they couldn't use the torches, so they had to send witnesses, which took longer.
But it's not Rosh Hashanah, it's talk about any Rosh Chodesh.
So, but I'm just wondering if...
We have a challenge with them, okay, it's a different subject. No.
Okay, it's completely different subject.
But in general, we explained in the past that Rosh Hashanah we treated differently. Even the Beit Din knew clearly what's the day, they treat it as one long day. I make as a side note, the way that those rabbis tells us that it's basically from the Rif's era. That's the way Rif tells us, but Rabbeinu Alfas. But up to his era, according to what we have, at least in the city of Yerushalayim, they have it only 1 day. Now, Ha'amar Rav Chinana bar Kahana Amar Rav, Mimot Ezra Vailach lo matzinu l'mubar. So we are talking about 420 years after the Churban. Amar Mar Zutra, lo amaran ela de'ishtahi. Here we have a Rishonim disputation. If Mar Zutra applied to the first clause, to the Reisha or the Seifa. According to Rashi, applies to the Seifa. According to the Ran, applies to the Reisha. And the Ran elaborates on that. And he said, what's the issue? You have a dead body. And we have the honor of the dignity of the deceased. And it takes time to bury the deceased. So he said, in those days, especially a young child, they use the term yeled, a young child. So they used to put it, which they call a special burial site. It's like a basement burial site that they put a combination of graves. So they say that that body, since it's a young body, the process of decay and carry a bad odor is longer than an adult. So anyway, Amar Mar Zutra lo amaran ela de'ishtahi. If for all kind of reasons it's delayed, and as you know, there are many reasons, especially you see in even in modern days there are so many reasons to delay. Let's give some examples, because I have so much experiences with this, as you know, in our community. I will not be an exaggeration to say that I made a couple of hundreds levias. So fortunately or fortunately, I'm very familiar with this. So for example, you have the issue of doctor's approval, signing all the papers, waiting for some family members to sign a consent. There's all kind of state regulation. Then you transfer it to the funeral home, and then is the process of freezing the body. Sometimes you need to wait for someone. There are a weather condition of burial and digging the graves that takes time to dig and do it properly. And you're talking about icy snow days, all kind of circumstance that you have all kind of delays that unexpected. Many times is beyond human or our capability. So we try to do what is 100% halachically correct, which is to do it as quick as possible. Yet the reality is that there are all kinds of delays. So we have a concern So if we have a reason that we delay all of that for serious reason, for example, just come to my mind, recognizing someone get shot, someone get killed, someone injured, someone, the DNA needs to come up with a clear definition. They have all kind of search. The police needs to come up with. It's endless.
There's any foul play involved, it's always going to delay things.
So all kind of reasons that delay beyond our control. There's a state law, as I said, in our state here is a lot of regulations. State of Maryland. Someone told me even more than many other states. It's very complicated. Plus, even the cemetery itself, there are rules. It's not just digging the grave. You have to make the cement according to the state regulations. You have to make the coffin according to regulations. It's a lot of details. So anyway, אבל לא ישתהה, מלשינן לי. But if it's not delay, we have to wait. We freeze the body and we wait after the festival. Another opinion, רב אשי אמר, אף על גב דלא ישתהה, נמי, לא מלשינן לי. Even the body was not delayed and will not carry a bad odor until the holiday is over, we not wait after the holiday. My tama, the reason for that, Yom Tov Sheni legabei met kechol shavio Rabbanan. Since the second day of the holiday, it's rabbinic precept. So we treat it by halacha, in that sense, especially when it's come to human dignity, as a regular secular day. And therefore, afilu lemegaz leglima ulemegaz leasa, meaning, for example, you have the shrouds, you have all the different tachrichim, but for million reasons, the family wants to change it, or you want to change it. You want to have something better. You want to have certain, the family will have different odors, different martels, different things that they put around the body to keep rancid in honor of the deceased, or to keep it in a good smell, or all kind of reason. It's extremely sensitive subject for many people, especially people who have only one family members that they live together for all their lives. So therefore we go lenient, and we said all tzorchei hamet, all the need for the deceased, we try to cooperate. Amar Ravina tells us v'ha'idna de'ikai chabarei, which means it was a very wicked nation in the time of Persian, that they have a lot of issues with them, that they force us to do all kind of works, even during our holy days. Chayshinan. So Tosfot here elaborate a lot on this. I just give you a vignette. Rabbeinu Tam tells us that in the France, and the Rosh brought it too, he said Yom Tov Sheni, the second day of the holidays, he hold that you cannot bury. And he said, I just read a few lines. Shemet Adam echad b'Yom Tov Sheni, someone passed in France the second day of the holidays, ורצו להתעסק בו לקוברו, and the community wants to take care of the burial, וגער בהם רבנו תם. Rabbeinu Tam was very strong with them. This is a grandson of Rashi, about 12th century. ושלח להם בני בשכר אינם בני תורה ואתם בני תורה. So he tried to tell them is that if you do that, guess what happened? The government, whatever is in charge, they interpreted that tomorrow they can force us to do work during the sacred days, because they don't see the positive essence of that. So as you see here, it's a very serious machloket poskim, very serious disputation among the rabbis. We're not poskim yet, we don't final rule halacha. Those who wants to read more, it's siman taf kuf kaf vav, that you have a large discussion in the code about it. Ravina Havayativ Kamei de Rav Ashi, student of Rav Ashi. So, Bishnei Yamim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah. So it means at that time Rosh Hashanah occurred on Thursday and Friday. Chazyei de Hava Atziv. He noticed that he is sad. Amar le Amar Yatziv Mar. He asked him, why you are sad? Amar le, Rav Ashi responded, Lo otivei eruvei tavshilin. So I'm using now my book, ביאורי כלומר ברש"י. Rashi tells us, לא הושבתי, כלומר לא הכנתי לי רובי תבשילין. So it means that's what I understand from this Rashi, etc., that he was upset because since you cannot cook and bake from festival to Shabbat, only if you designate it in advance Eruvei Tavshilin before the holidays. So he's now upset, he doesn't know what to do. Amar lei velotiv mar ha'idna. So you should do it today, which is Thursday, the first day of the holidays. Milo amar Rava maniach adam eruvei tavshilim yom tov lechavro umatnei. When you have the 2 days of festival in diaspora, on Thursday and Friday, and the person, by force of circumstance, forgets to put eruvei tavshilim in advance before the first day of the holidays, so he can make a condition. He said, if today is a regular secular day and tomorrow is the real holiday, this eruv will be in effect. And if today is a sacred day and tomorrow is a regular day, so I don't need to make any eruv because tomorrow I can prepare for Shabbat. It's Friday is a regular day. So in other words, he holds that in this circumstance, when it's the Thursday and Friday holidays, you can make eruvei tavshilim even. And Rav Ashi responded, and he said, Amar lei, Eima de Amar Rava, Bishnei Yamim Tovim Shegaluyot. What Rava said is, in the diaspora, when you have 2 days, and you don't know which one is correct, that's a different story. Because then you know for sure that one of the days is a regular day. So you can make that condition. Bishnei Yamim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah, Mi Amar Mar. How do you compare, how do you juxtapose between the 2 days of the festival to 2 days of the Rosh Hashanah? Because you cannot tell me, since they make it a one long holiday, as we explained, Kedusha Achad, how you do that. You can't say that one day is sacred, the other one not, and vice versa. V'ha'amrei na'ardei, we said in the city of Naharda, af Beitzah muteret. Even you have a Beitzah, you have an egg that laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you're allowed to use it at the second day. So you mean to say that we don't treat Rosh Hashanah as a one long day. So therefore, you may go to the assumption that you can have a eruvei tavshilim at the first day of the holiday, and you make a condition the same as all the other holidays. Amar le Rav Mordechai. Rav Mordechai was a student of Rav Ashi. He responded to Ravina. Beferush Amar Limar, my teacher Rav Ashi, said to me, De lo savar leha de na'ardei. He doesn't hold that way, the na'ardei said, but he holds that the second day you cannot use it because it's treated as one long day. So you cannot make this stipulation, this condition from one to another, meaning you cannot have eruvei tavshilim, and therefore Rav Ashi was concerned. Today is Thursday and is a holiday, and what should I do with food for Shabbat? Now, in a way we completed a discussion in regard to the second day of festival. Now we go back to our Mishnah discussion. Itmar. Now we have a discussion which go a little deeper. We're not just talking about egg, we're talking about small chick. Let's give just a few seconds of understanding, process. The mother chick has the baby. The baby egg laid out. Now it's come out of the shell. It takes time for the little chick to open the eyes. Now we enter the domain of the creeping animals, Hilchot Shratzim, which is a little different in halacha. Meaning, lo baka miklipato, it didn't come out of the shell yet. Efroach shenolad biyom tov. You have now a very early stage that chick was hatched on a festival. Rav amar asur. Rav said, forget it. We treat it like a creeping, like a sheretz. Ushmuel v'item Rabbi Yochanan amar mutar. Rav amar asur muktzeu. Rav said that it's considering a muktzeh, set aside. So even a person can take off the shell and slaughter that chick according to halacha, it's still in a prohibition of creeping animal. You cannot do that. Because Tosfot said in the second explanation that a sling is not coming out of the shell, it's nothing. Ushmuel, v'itema, there are some say that it's Rabbi Yochanan, Amar mutar, he said it's okay, otil ve'motir atzmo bishchita, the moment that it's born, this chick, and he's left the hand, it's already like regular animal, you can slaughter, so as long as it's not coming out of the egg, it's not laid, so it's prohibited. But if you open the egg and you slaughter properly the chick, so the moment it's born and you need it for food for that holiday, so therefore you can go the same as regular big animal and slaughter. So Tosfot have a discussion here, which again we don't have the time. What's the difference between the chick open his eyes or not, which is a serious discussion in halacha. But anyway, Amrelei Rav Kahana v'Rav Asi l'Rav v'chima ben ze leven egel shonal biyom tov. In halacha, remember we study in Shabbat, we said that if you're dealing with haoreg kigna keoreg gemal, you're killing a lice is like you're killing a camel. So as far as halacha is concerned, what's the difference between this little chick and a big calf? Right? Amar lehu, so he responded and he said, so the Pnei Yoshua said that that's applied to a blemish firstborn. Anyway, so he responded and he said, O'il v'muchan agav imo bishchita, meaning in a case you need to slaughter the mother, and while you are in the process of slaughtering the mother, you find the baby. So the moment that you did properly the slaughtering of the mother, you can go ahead and continue on. So it means that that baby, theoretically speaking, is not considering a muktzeh, a set aside, and therefore, if you ate that little chick inside the mother, it's an issue. In other words, you must separate between chick and a calf. So the Rashba elaborates on that, and the Rashba tells us, look, when you talk about chick, the big disputation between Rav and Shmuel, they have the issue of muktzeh, right? Set aside. But you cannot compare that to our discussion on page 2, which is perosh l'noshrim, the fruits from the trees, or the liquid that come out of the tree. Can't compare that. It's how do you say it? Apple and orange is two different things. Uma ben ze le'egel shenolad min hatreifa. So Agriza Levi explained, follow this Rashi. He said, look, you have a mother. Our understanding is, let's say it's a calf, the mother, or the chicken. They have the egg. In that sense, we say that it's part of the mother's eivarim, part of the mother's limbs. It's part of the mother's body.
Right.
So you treat it halachically in both ways the same. Meaning the same way as the small one within the mother's body, it's part of the body. When you're slaughtering the mother, it's part of the body of the mother. The same way it's applied the other way around when it's come to treifa, to define something that is prohibited for eating, it's applied to both. So he said, so therefore, he tried to juxtapose between the calf and the chick. So even that he wasn't ready, but after it was laid, so you can basically slaughter the chick and eat it. So Shatik Rav. So Rav heard that question, he displayed equanimity, he was quiet. Amar Rabba v'itema Rav Yosef. Ma'itama Shatik Rav. Why? He was acquiesced for what? Leima lehu, he should tell them that if you have a calf that was born to the mother that is treifa, that it's not kosher, it's not considering muktzeh, ho'il umuchan agavimo laklevim. There is a concept in halacha that you feed the dog with the dead animals. So, therefore, the same way as the mother who's treifa, who's dead, not kosher, can be fed the dog can eat it. The same applies to what the mother carries in her womb. Versus a chick, when the chick is inside the egg, it's not befitting for food for the dogs. So therefore, the moment it was born, it's considering nolad, it's laid already, and therefore you cannot compare it the same. Rashi elaborate what exactly geder nolad, what exactly the definition of that. Amar lei Abaye, Abaye respond to Rav Yosef, page 6-2, Hashta mukhan le'adam, lo havi mukhan le'klavim. Rabbi Yehuda is more stringent when it's come to the law of muktzeh. So something that it's prepared, fit for human consumption, that becomes spoiled is not automatically considered prepared for dogs. Here is a proof. Ditnan, we learn in Mishnah, Tractate Shabbat, page 156b, Mechatchin et adlu'in, one may cut pumpkins before an animal, לפני הבהמה, meaning that was cut earlier, and you cannot say that it's too much work. ואת הנבלה לפני הכלבים, the same, a dead animal before Cyrus, before your dog, right? רבי יהודה אומר, אם לא הייתה נבלה בערב שבת, if the eve of Shabbat was still alive, which means בין השמשות, in the twilight it's still alive, asura. All of a sudden you come back from shul and it's dead, boom, it's muktzeh. Why? לפי שאינה מן המוכן, it wasn't ready, it wasn't dead, and fit for dog prior to Shabbat. So Tosfot have an issue with that because they said that they how do you compare the two between human consumption and dogs? Anyway, מוכן לכלבים, הווי מוכן לאדם. You tell me that how do you compare the two? Something that's befitting for the dogs, it's not for human. Remind me someone, I don't mention names. We have a member of the shul. Those who understand, he divorced 3 times. Anyway, the story goes, and he admitted, when I visited him last time in a hospital, he admitted it's true, that his, I think, she was second ex-wife. So one time she was mad at him. So she went and she took the dog's food and she combined it with a scrambled egg and she served him. And I asked him, it's true? And he said, yes. And he said, Rabbi, I ate it. And it was delicious. Anyway, Amar Lei, Rabbi responded to him.
Not kosher.
Rabbi responded to him and said, hey, מוכן לאדם לא הווי מוכן לכלבים. He says, yes, it is not surprising that something prepared and fit for human is not considering prepared for dogs. דמן דחזי לאיניש, that something that's good for people, לא שדי לכלבים. You don't give it to the dogs. מוכן לכלבים, הווי מוכן לאדם. Why? דדעתי דאיניש, אכל מידה דחזלי. So, a person eats, mine is anything that fit to be eaten by him. One does not completely remove from his mind even food meant for dogs, if it is kosher and edible. Buh. Consequently, one has in mind the possibility that he might eat the calf of a cow that is a treifa once it's born, since at that point it will be kosher and edible. Tanya kvatei de Rav, Tanya kvatei de Shmuel, Vitema, Rabbi Yochanan. Tanya kvatei de Rav. Egel shemvad biyom tov. You have a calf that was born in festival. Asur, mutar, permissible. Versus a froach shemvad biyom tov. Chick, asur, prohibited. My flesh ben ze leze, what's the difference? זה מוכן אגב עמו בשחיטה, וזה לא מוכן אגב עמו. Obviously, you have an animal, you have in its intestine, in its womb, the calf. So you slaughter the mother, you eat the baby. Versus with the chick, it's not alive, it's not opening his eyes, as Tosfot said, he's not moving, he's not acting. So it's inside the shell of the egg. Yeah. You cannot slaughter and eat it as long as it's not coming out of the shell. You cannot compare. Versus Tani Kvatei de Shmuel Vitem Rabbi Yochanan, Eged Shvat Biyom Tov Mutar, V'Forach Shvat Biyom Mutar, both of them permissible. Why? Mai Tama, Ze Muchan Agav Imo, V'Ze Matir Atzmo Shchila. The one is by the way you eat the mother, you eat him. The other one is that the moment the chick opens her eyes and is ready to be slaughtered, so it's remove himself from the muktzeh prohibition, and therefore you eat it as regular slaughtering of animals. Another opinion. Now we go to the Tosfot discussion earlier. We differentiate between the little chick open the eyes or not. Famous text in Vayikra in Leviticus chapter 11, לכל השרץ השורט על הארץ, לרבות אפרוחים שלא נפתחו עיניהם. So that's famous Gemarrah in Chulin, page 64b. That when he's talking about creeping animal, you have to differentiate between a baby chick that its teeth so tiny small, not even open the eyes, versus a creature, a normal creature that open the eyes and out of the shell. Kemal, to whom they go? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, ביצה, אם מציאתה נגמרה. The moment it left, it's over. מה אם מציאתה נגמרה? אילמה אם מציאתה נגמרה ומותרת לאוכלה בחלב. So it's a different story. ביממה אסורה לאכול בחלב, because it's not an egg, it's meat. והתניא שחוט את תרנגול במצב ביצים מאוד מותרים לאכול בחלב. If you slaughter the chicken, and all of a sudden while you do that you find an egg that is it's already complete, you can combine it with halab. So he said, you cannot tell me that Rav disputed the Beitzah, אלא אם יציאתה נגמרה ומותרת לאוכלה ביום טוב. So when it's coming out, you can eat it during the festival, which means if it's left before the festival, then it's completed during the week and it's okay. Ha bim eima, if it's still inside the mother, even it is fully in form, it's considered meat, and therefore asura לאוכלה ביום טוב. It's prohibited to eat it with during the festival. Why? That's what Rabbah said. והכינו את אשר יביאו. You have to do the hachana, the preparation, in advance. Another way to interpret the Rav's point, אלא אם יציאתה נגמרה, that an egg is fully formed upon its emerges, that it is permitted to eat it. And he said, ומותר לאוכלה ביום טוב, במאימה, but it's still in mother's womb, אסורה לאוכלה ביום טוב. So that's the הכנה. והתניא, השוחטת את התרנגולת ומצא בביצים גמורות, if you slaughter the chicken and you find the full eggs, מותרות לאוכלה ביום טוב. So it means that the Rav prohibited to eat during the festival if you find the eggs that it's within the mother womb after slaughter. So that's contradictory to what he said earlier. So now we try to finalize by halacha v'chitem hakamashna b'Beitzah, that the Tana tried to teach us in the Beitzah. Mai de lo ashminan b'matnitin, what we didn't learn in the Mishnah. So you cannot go by halacha in this Beitzah. So in other words, if Rabbi didn't say it, how do Rabbi Chia say it? So Rabbi Chia was a student, and he was the one who mesader Beitzah, the one who put together the Beitzah. It has to make sense. How do you know it? So he said, Hana mitanina. We learned that in the Mishnah. Beitzah shnolda biyom tov. If you have, that's back to the Mishnah. If you have an egg that laid during the festival, Beit Shammai אומרים תאכל ובית אומרים לא תאכל. עד כאן לא פליגי בית שמאי ובית הלל אלא בנולדה. Only if they lay during the festival. אבל בימי אימה הכל שריין. If it's still in the mother's womb, everyone said that it's okay. So וכי תימה בית הלל. If you tell me that that's go by the Beit Hillel also prohibited egg inside the mother. אפילו מימנה מעשרה ועד קטנה נולדה. The Mishnah used the term led. להודיעך גוחן דבית שמאי, to show you how much Beit Shammai was lenient. דאפילו נולדה נמי שרו, that even the egg was laid, they still allowed to eat it. אלא דתניא, what we learn in the Beitzah, שחוט תרנגול במצב ביצים גמורות, if you slaughter the chicken and you found complete eggs, Mutaron lochlat biyom tov, you are permissible to eat it on a festival. Mani, who is the Tana that learned this Braita? Lo Beit Shammai velo Beit Hillel. Why? Because if you go by Beit Shammai said that the egg that was laid is permissible to eat. And therefore, why the Braita allow only egg that is still in a mother's womb? And if you go by the Beit Hillel, even that it's still in a mother's womb, it's still prohibited. So you have to say that Rav did not meant to prohibit it on the festival, egg that is completed with its mother womb after it's slaughtered. So you come to conclusion, Ella, you have to say that Rav meant to say, Im yetziata nigmerah. That it means that the egg is fully formed upon its emerges. And it produced cheeks. Umgadelet efrochim, an egg laid in the regular manner can be incubated, and a chick will hatch from it. What's the difference? So they say, if you want to purchase or sell. So if someone want to purchase eggs in order to raise chicken, and they gave him eggs that completed while they are still in its mother's womb, that's considering a false business, mekach tahut, a false pretenses for understanding. Why? Because it's not befitting to raise chicken, and therefore it's a mekach batel, the whole deal is void. In other words, one of the idea of mekach tahut is when you have Reuven and Shimon and they make transaction between two parties, each party needs to understand what's involved, and still it was misleading information since that baby chicken is not for raising more, therefore it's all annul and void. Here is a story. It was one individual who will say to the general public, to those who sell eggs, the fachya, page 7. The fachya leman, on the live chicken who has, which means alive and a slaughter, leman, yahavuli beide shchuta. They brought him and they gave him an eggs of a slaughtered chicken. Oh, the Rabami came with Rav Ami, and he said, mekach tahutu is a mistake of business. Vehadar, and the return to the seller, and it's void. So the Gemara said, Pshita, that's obvious that it's a total misunderstanding and it should be void. Ma'udetema, you may say, Hailachilakabau. So the person wants to eat that eggs. V'hailekama defachya, and when he used the term live chicken, he meant to say that he wants an egg from a live animal. Mishum de tzriva, and because it's fully it's fully ready. Lemay nafkamina, what's the difference between them? Lemeitva lebenu leveine. So he have a different value between eggs that already out, the eggs that it's in. Kamash melan. So Rabbi Ami said that it's a false transactions and it's totally void, and the seller return all the money that he gets from the buyer, because one who wants eggs from a live animal wanted to raise from them a chicken, and therefore if you have eggs that found in a mother's womb, they don't carry value because it's not befitting to raise chicken. Hahuda Amarlo, in other stories, someone said to the egg seller, again, it's different between fertilization or not. I want egg that comes out of relation with a male chicken. They gave him a chicken that sat on the floor without male involvement. He said, hey, I wanted something that comes out of relations, and that was just because the chicken sat on the floor and warmed it. He said, you're right, and it's a false transaction. So he said, Pshita, the same story. A person wants to eat it, but again, he wants to eat a certain eggs. And what he said, it's come out of male, because he value eggs in a different manners than eggs that don't come from relation with male. למאי נפקא מינה, למית לבין לביני, the different values. כמשמע, the same story. ובית תימה, another option. מה היא מציאתה לגמרא? What do you mean that when it's come out, it's totally ready? היא מציאת רובה נגמרה, most of the eggs come out. כדרבי יוחנן אמר ביוחנן ביצה, שיצא ברובה מערב יום טוב וחזרה. מותרת לאוכלה ביום טוב. So meaning, it's come and goes, and come again, you can eat it on there. It's like the same as egg was born before in the eve of a festival. The one who said, my imetziat nigmara, what do you mean it's completed when it's come out? Imetziat kula nigmara, when it's fully come out. Imetziat kula ein, if the total comes out of the egg, then you can eat it on a festival. Aval ruba, but most, lo, le'apuk Rabbi Yochanan. That Rabbi Yochanan, Rav intend to dispute Rabbi Yochanan, that said that what considering a total leidag murad, total laying the eggs, when most but not all. So that's the point that he disputed him. Before we go to practical halachot today, unlike average day, I would like to make a declaration, a very important disclaimer, that all the halachot I'm going to share with you today, it's not meant to have paskin, to rules for all those individuals who are going to learn or watch us in the future. And if those serious questions will come up, a person must consult a prominent posek, a prominent, very erudite rabbi before making those halachic decisions. Ubati rak le'orer, my goal is just to read to you some halachot and to open your eyes to those halachot. But again, you have to ask if it happens. First halacha is met b'yom tov. A corpse that is to be buried on the first festival day should be attended by a non-Jew rather than Jews, even if this could be left until the next day without demeaning the dead. This halacha applies to digging the graves and preparing a coffin and shrouds. However, the ritual washing and cleansing, which the Chevra Kadisha does, including the heating of water for this purpose and the removal of the actual burial of the corpse, may be performed by the Jewish people as well. If one dies on the second day of the festival, including the second day of Rosh Hashanah, as you remember the reef, Jews should attend to the corpse and tend to all of its needs. If it is necessary to remove the body outside the city for burial, that is permitted. As with regard to the dead, the second festival day is considered a weekday. Even if it can be arranged by non-Jews to care for the dead, it is preferable for Jews to do so. However, here you have a little difference between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. The Ashkenazi custom is to have all labors prohibited by Torah law performed by non-Jews whenever possible. That's the Ramah, with the Jewish people doing the rest. A Torah prohibition may be performed by Jews only if it cannot be done by non-Jews. All this applies, that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 526, to cases where the decision is made to bury him or her that day. If, however, for some reason the decision is not to bury him or her that day, nothing prohibited may be performed on his or her behalf, even by the non-Jews. We talk about Eruv Tavshilin Betnai, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 527. If one forgets to prepare a joining of cooked food before a festival that immediately precedes Shabbat, he may do so on the first festival day by means of a stipulation. He takes a loaf of bread and cooked food suitable for this purpose and says, if today is a holy, I do not need to make a joining of cooked food. If tomorrow is holy, this is joining of cooked food by means of which I can bake and cook for Shabbat. Same say that no blessing is recited over the joining of cooked food. That's the Vilna Gaon and Rabbi Akiva Iger and the Mishnah Berurah brought them. Now, the Be'ur Halacha said that it's preferable to rely on the joining of cooked foods placed by most prominent Torah scholar in the city on behalf of everyone, rather than ones whose own stipulation by others hold the opposite. All this applies only to regular festival, but on Rosh Hashanah this condition is of no effect, as the Ravina state, and again, to see more is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 527. Those farmers, Egel Shenolad B'Yom Tov, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 498. With regard to a calf born in festival, if the mother was designated for food, it is permitted to slaughter it on the festival itself, provided that it was carried for that term. Some commentaries maintain that it must be also spread the leg on the ground. We said if the chick born on festival, it's prohibited to eat it until nightfall when the festival concluded. Furthermore, it may not be moved as it's muktzeh. That Shulchan Aruch Harav and the Mishnah Berurah, and you see more in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 513.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai